Let's talk about something that nobody in the TV criticism space wants to say out loud, because it involves criticizing the fans. And fans, as we all know, do not love being criticized. But I think this conversation is overdue, and I think if you're honest with yourself, you're going to agree with me by the end of this. Lost broke us. Not in a bad way at first. When it aired in 2004, it was genuinely revolutionary. It was one of the most ambitious things ever put on television. A plane crashes on a mysterious island. Survivors try to figure out where they are. And almost immediately, you realize this island is not normal. There are polar bears in a tropical jungle. There's a mysterious hatch buried in the ground. There's a monster made of black smoke that nobody can explain. And the show doesn't explain it either. Not right away. Not for seasons. And that was the genius of it. Lost made you feel like you were doing archaeology. Every episode left you with more questions than answers. Every frame felt like it might be hiding a secret. Audiences weren't just watching anymore. They were investigating. And that changed television. Permanently. Not always for the better. Because what Lost really did wasn't just tell a great story. What it did was train an entire generation of viewers to believe that every single thing on screen is a clue. That every shadow in the background, every offhand line of dialogue, every prop on a desk is intentionally placed there to hint at something deeper. It created what we now call the mystery box style of storytelling, a term that the show's producer J.J. Abrams actually coined himself. And for a while, it worked spectacularly. It rewarded obsessive viewers. It gave birth to a whole new culture of fan forums, theory boards, and YouTube breakdowns. People going frame by frame through episodes looking for Easter eggs, building elaborate timelines, cross-referencing dialogue from 3 seasons ago to prove some theory about the nature of the island. And I get it. I genuinely get it. That feeling of discovering what you think is a hidden connection, that little dopamine hit when 2 pieces click together, that's one of the most satisfying things a story can give you. Lost was basically engineered to manufacture that feeling on a weekly basis. It was a machine designed to make you feel like the smartest person in the room every time you spotted something. But here's the thing about machines. Once they build a behavior into you, that behavior doesn't just disappear when the machine turns off. The show ended in 2010, and viewers took everything they learned from it and they carried it forward. They brought that investigative mindset to every single news show that came along. And for shows built the same way, shows like Westworld, like Dark, like Severance, that was perfect. Those shows absolutely reward that kind of deep analysis. They're designed for it. They have layers. They have hidden meanings. They want you digging. But what happens when that mindset gets applied to a show that was never built that way? What happens when viewers trained by Lost show up to a show that's just trying to tell a human story? That's where we get to the Pit. And this is the part of the conversation I really want you to sit with, because I think what's happening to the Pit online is one of the most fascinating and kind of sad examples of Lost's long-term cultural damage. For those who haven't watched it, the Pit is a medical drama set in a Pittsburgh emergency room. It stars Noah Weil, who you might know from ER back in the day, and the show follows one incredibly intense 15-hour shift in real time. Each episode is roughly 1 hour of in-show time, and the whole season maps out an entire day in this ER. It's gritty. It's raw. It's the kind of show where you feel the exhaustion and the moral weight of working in emergency medicine. The writing is sharp. The performances are outstanding. The show is made by people who clearly know medicine, who clearly respect the people who work in these environments, and who are committed to portraying the chaos and humanity of emergency care with honesty and without sentimentality. In short, it is a grounded, character-driven, emotionally honest drama about people doing an incredibly hard job. It is not a mystery show. There is no island. There is no hatch. There is no smoke monster. And yet, if you go online right now, you will find corners of the internet where people are absolutely convinced that something is being hidden, that there are codes buried in the dialogue, that one of the characters might be imaginary, like the whole thing could be a hallucination or a psychological episode. I've seen people float the idea that a specific attending physician doesn't exist and is just a manifestation of a younger doctor's anxiety or guilt. I've seen theories involving hidden trauma that secretly recontextualizes the entire timeline. I've seen someone, and I want to be clear, an actual human being typing with their own fingers suggests that the show might be playing with time. That the 15-hour structure is not literal, but symbolic of something much stranger. And I don't say this to be mean to those people, because I understand the impulse completely. It comes from a real place. It comes from years of being trained to look for the trick, to expect the reveal, to assume that no show is ever just what it appears to be on the surface. But The Pitt is exactly what it appears to be on the surface. A masterfully constructed, emotionally demanding, beautifully performed portrait of one day in an emergency room. The complexity in The Pitt is not hidden. It's not encoded. It's right there in the faces of the actors. It's in the way a veteran nurse makes a split-second decision that she's clearly made 1,000 times before. It's in the way a young resident hesitates for just 1 second too long and has to live with what that hesitation cost. The show is not hiding its meaning. The show is putting its meaning directly in front of your eyes and trusting you to feel it. And that trust is actually a radical act in the current TV landscape. Because most shows have been conditioned by the post-Lost environment to at least gesture toward mystery, to include something that looks like a larger mythology, even if there isn't one, to give the theory builders something to chew on, because theory building drives engagement, and engagement drives conversation, and conversation drives algorithmic visibility. Shows have learned to bait the mystery box crowd, even when the mystery box isn't really there. The Pitt doesn't do that, and it shouldn't have to. But here's where social media makes everything worse, because it always does. The way discourse about television works now is fundamentally shaped by what generates the most interaction. A post that says, "Noah, while gave a devastating performance in episode 4 and I cried," gets maybe 100 likes. A post that says, "Did anyone else notice that the clock on the wall in episode 2 is set to the wrong time, and I think it's a clue about the doctor's mental state," gets 10,000 likes and 300 comments in a 6-part Reddit thread. The algorithm doesn't reward appreciation. It rewards speculation. It rewards the feeling that you've discovered something. And because Lost trained an entire generation to believe that discovering things is the correct way to watch television, that's what people perform online, even when there's nothing to discover. This creates a feedback loop that's genuinely damaging to how shows are received. A viewer who would have otherwise watched The Pitt and simply felt it, let it land emotionally the way it was designed to, instead goes online, finds the theory community, and starts to doubt their experience. Maybe they're missing something. Maybe there's a deeper layer. Maybe the straightforward reading is naive, and the sophisticated reading is that nothing is what it seems. And so they go back and watch again, not to feel, but to analyze. And they find what every human brain finds when it goes looking for patterns in complex things. They find patterns. Because that's what human brains do. They are pattern recognition machines. You point a human brain at anything with enough detail and tell it to look for meaning, and it will find meaning whether the meaning is there or not. This is how you end up with vampire theories. Yes, I said vampire theories. There have been actual discussions in corners of the Pitt fandom suggesting that certain character behaviors might hint at something supernatural. Not metaphorically supernatural, literally supernatural. Actual people sincerely entertaining the idea that a show about an emergency room in Pittsburgh might secretly be about creatures of the night. And again, I'm not trying to ridicule these people, because when you strip away the specific content of the theory, the underlying behavior is completely rational given the media environment these viewers grew up in. They've been taught over and over again by prestige television, by podcasts, by YouTube channels, by viral Twitter threads, that the superficial reading is never enough. That the smart viewer always goes deeper. That every show is a puzzle. And so they go deeper on a show that doesn't have deeper to go, and they start inventing the depth themselves. This is actually a concept in literary theory called the pathetic fallacy, which is when a human being projects meaning onto something that doesn't inherently have it. But in the Lost era, the pathetic fallacy became the dominant mode of television consumption, and it's infected everything. Look at what happened to Westworld. That show started as a genuinely brilliant, layered mystery, and it became so consumed by its own mythology and by the fan theory ecosystem surrounding it that it lost the thread of what made it great in the first place. The show started writing for the theorists instead of writing for the story, and it collapsed under the weight of its own complexity. And Lost itself, let's be honest, suffered from a version of this problem. By the time the finale aired, the show had made so many promises to so many fan communities with competing theories that there was no possible ending that could have satisfied everyone. The mystery box style carries within it the seeds of its own undoing, because the longer you maintain mystery, the higher the expectations for the revelation, and revelations almost never live up to 20 years of accumulated fan imagination. The shows that thrive in the post-Lost landscape are the ones that found a way to satisfy both the mystery seekers and the casual viewers. Better Call Saul threaded this needle brilliantly. It had layers of meaning, it rewarded close attention, but its emotional core was so strong that even if you never noticed a single Easter egg, the show hit you where it needed to. The same is true of The Bear, which is interesting to bring up because The Bear and the Pitt occupy similar territory. High-pressure professional environments, morally complex characters, almost suffocating tension built through craft rather than mythology. And The Bear also attracted its share of overanalyzers, people looking for hidden meanings in the restaurant layout or the color of the chef's jacket. But The Bear was aggressive and loud enough in its sensory experience that most people just got swept up in it. The Pitt is quieter, more deliberate, and that quiet deliberateness, which is actually a sign of tremendous confidence as a piece of storytelling, gets misread as concealment. The show must be quiet because it's hiding something. The restraint must be a strategy. The simplicity must be a surface. It isn't. The Pitt is confident enough in its own emotional truth that it doesn't need to seduce you with the promise of revelations. And that's actually a harder thing to do than building a mystery box. Building a mystery box is, in some ways, the easy option. You promise answers you haven't figured out yet. You let the audience's imagination do half the work for you. You get rewarded for withholding. Telling a human story without tricks, without gimmicks, without a mythology to hide behind, and making that story compelling enough to hold people's attention across an entire season, that requires genuine craft. That requires writers and directors and actors who trust the material and trust the audience. The Pitt trusts its audience. The question is whether the audience, trained by 20 years of mystery box television, can return that trust. Can we accept a show that gives us what it gives us without demanding that it secretly be giving us something else? Can we sit with the emotion instead of immediately running to theorize it away? Because here's the thing about overanalyzing a show like The Pitt. When you spend your energy looking for hidden meanings in the clock on the wall, you stop feeling the weight of what a 15-hour emergency room shift actually does to a human being. You stop experiencing what it feels like to make an impossible decision with incomplete information and no time to think. You trade emotional experience for intellectual exercise, and in doing so, you miss the actual point of the show entirely. And I think that's worth grieving a little. Not in a dramatic way, but genuinely. Because Lost gave us something extraordinary. It expanded what television could be. It proved that audiences would show up for complex, serialized storytelling with real ambition and real stakes. It created a community of viewers who cared deeply about the medium in a way that felt new. And then it trained that community to engage with every show as if it were Lost. And that's where the gift started to become a problem. The legacy of Lost is not just its own story. Its legacy is a generation of viewers who can't turn the mystery detector off, who can't watch a quiet, honest drama without wondering what the show is really about beneath the surface, who confuse simplicity with shallowness and restraint with concealment. The Pitt is not hiding anything from you. It is showing you something. It is showing you what it looks like when human beings are pushed to their absolute limit and still show up and still care and still try. It is showing you grief and resilience and bureaucracy and beauty all mixed together in the fluorescent lit hell of an overwhelmed emergency department. It is showing you real things. All you have to do is let yourself see them. And maybe that's the real lesson we need to take from all of this. Lost taught us to be better detectives. Now we need to teach ourselves to sometimes put the magnifying glass down, to not every single episode be the Sherlock Holmes of television theory, to occasionally just watch a show the way you'd sit with a piece of music, not analyzing the notes, just hearing it. Some stories don't have secret codes. Some stories just have truth. And truth, when it's told this well, is more than enough.